Four Democrats in the race for governor vying for that chance to move on to the November general election, including Francesca Hong, David Crowley, Kelda Roys, and Joel Brennan. Hong has led in polling since early in the race and has the support of the party's most liberal progressives. Chief political reporter Jason Zimmerman is following the Hong campaign. He is live for us in Madison this afternoon. Jason.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to turn.
Cami, 3 states have primaries tonight, but all eyes across the country will be on Wisconsin because a win by Francesca Hong would set the stage for the first Democratic Socialist to be elected to a governor's seat. And this would be especially big, being that Wisconsin is a Midwestern purple state. Hong voted this morning in Madison and spoke to reporters before spending the rest of the day campaigning across the city, where she needs a big turnout to be successful in winning this primary. This is where she serves as a state representative, and it's an area that's really been ground zero for DSA support. However, there's been a lot of concern, even among Democrats, how that platform could play among voters, especially independents in the general election.
I think that Wisconsin has a proud history of progressivism, and the policies that we are fighting for honor that, but more importantly, they honor working class people who should be first in government.
If Hong does win, it could be an interesting thing to watch, the size of that margin, as if it is sizable. It could set the stage for a lot more DSA candidates to get into races moving forward. Reporting live in Madison, Jason Zimmerman, Action 2 News.
Jason, thank you. Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley also in the running for governor on the Democratic side. Crowley pitching his experience leading the state's largest county as he makes his case to primary voters today. Let's check in with Drew Best covering the Crowley campaign. Drew.
Hey, Cami, we're at the Hyatt Regency in Milwaukee, where County Executive David Crowley and his supporters are going to watch the votes roll in. Crowley casted his ballot this morning, joined by his family at the polls. He's the governor-endorsed Democratic candidate, Tony Evers, joining Crowley on the campaign trail over the past couple weeks. You may remember Crowley at one point ended his campaign last month and endorsed Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez. Not too far after, Rodriguez dropped out of the race following a campaign finance scandal, and within one day, Crowley re-entered the race. While he has trailed Francesca Hong in recent polling, Crowley has also raised more than double the money for his campaign than Hong in the month of July. Crowley's been labeled by some as the establishment candidate, which he's pushed back on, saying he's running for the people rather than the establishment. Crowley recognizes the kind of ground he's had to make up in the final stretch of this Democratic primary, but he also says the polls don't tell the full story. We'll find out in just a few hours if Crowley's latest push was strong enough to earn the Democratic bid. Reporting in Milwaukee, Drew Best, Action 2 News.
Drew, thank you. Two more Democratic candidates also watching tonight's returns with supporters. Joel Brennan holding his election night event in Milwaukee at Central Standard Craft House and Kitchen in Madison. Kelda Roys gathering with her backers at the Cambridge Winery in Madison at a tasting room there. The polls close at 8 o'clock tonight. You will find complete primary coverage and results right on our website, wbay.com/election.